Have you ever stopped and really wondered what consciousness actually is? You know, that feeling of being you.
It's fundamental, isn't it? That awareness we all have.
Exactly. And is it just stuff happening in our heads? Or could it be something, well, bigger? Something beyond our skulls?
That's precisely what we're diving into today.
Yeah, this deep dive is for you, our listener. We're looking at some pretty groundbreaking scientific evidence that really challenges the usual way we think about consciousness in the brain.
Right. Our goal is basically to give you a shortcut to getting up to speed on a topic that is, frankly, mind-bending.
And our main source today is an interview with Mark Gober. He wrote An End to Upside Down Thinking.
It's a fascinating book, dispelling the myth, as he puts it, that the brain produces consciousness and looking at the huge implications if that's not true.
What's interesting, too, is his background, right? He wasn't always deep in this stuff.
Not at all. He came from Silicon Valley, a business background, which I think shows how these questions, these deep scientific questions, can really grab anyone. It's not just for physicists or philosophers.
Okay, so let's get into the core idea. It tackles what's sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness.
Ah, yes, the hard problem. Basically, how does physical stuff, neurons firing chemicals, create this inner subjective feeling of being?
Yeah, your awareness right now, listening to us, it's real. You're experiencing it,
Yeah.
but you can't, like, hold it or point to it like you can your brain.
It's not physical in the same way. So how does the physical body produce something non-physical? That's the puzzle.
And the standard view, the one most of us grew up with, is that the brain just does it somehow. Complex reactions, electricity, presto, consciousness.
Right, that's the assumption. But Gobert, drawing on a lot of research, puts forward a really different hypothesis.
Which is?
That the brain isn't producing consciousness at all. It's acting more like a receiver. Or maybe a filter.
A receiver, like a radio picking up a signal.
Kind of, yeah. Or a TV tuning into a broadcast. The idea is that consciousness itself is more fundamental, maybe existing well beyond the individual body.
So our brains and bodies are just vehicles,
Yeah.
ways of processing this bigger consciousness.
Exactly. Vehicles for processing it, experiencing it in this localized way, not the factory making it from scratch.
Okay, that's a big shift. But what about the evidence? I mean, we know brain activity and consciousness are linked.
Absolutely. And this is crucial. There's a strong correlation. You stimulate the visual cortex, you see flashes of light. Brain damage happens. Memory or personality can change.
Right, so it seems obvious then the brain must be the cause.
It seems obvious, but this is where we hit that critical distinction. Correlation does not imply causation. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, Dr. Bernardo Kastrup uses a great analogy, the firefighter analogy.
Ah, I think I've heard this one. Go on.
You see a big fire, right? And what else do you see? Lots of firefighters. The bigger the fire, the more firefighters. There's a strong correlation.
It makes sense.
But do the firefighters cause the fire?
No, of course not. They're responding to it.
Precisely. So just because brain changes correlate with consciousness changes, it doesn't automatically prove the brain is the cause. Maybe the brain is just responding to consciousness, or changes in how it's filtering or receiving that consciousness.
Okay, that analogy really helps. So the brain might be reacting, not creating. If that's the case, what does science itself, especially quantum physics, say about reality that might fit this receiver idea?
Quantum physics. This is where things get really interesting and, honestly, pretty weird. Accepted science shows that at the most fundamental level, reality is quantum. It's not just theory, it's how things work down there.
Even though it feels totally different from our everyday world.
Totally. But take something like quantum entanglement. You have two particles linked, you measure one, and instantly faster than light, the other one reflects that measurement no matter how far apart they are.
That's the spooky action at a distance Einstein talked about.
That's the one. He wasn't comfortable with it, but it's been proven again and again. What it suggests is a deep, fundamental interconnectedness. Things aren't as separate as they seem.
So consciousness could be part of that non-local connection.
That's a potential implication, yes.
Mhm.
If consciousness itself is fundamental, maybe it operates outside the bounds of just one brain, linked in ways we don't fully grasp yet.
And then there's the observer effect, right, in those double-slit experiments.
Exactly. The very act of measuring or observing a particle seems to change its behavior. It's like it knows it's being watched.
Which is just bizarre. It suggests consciousness isn't just a passive observer, but might actually play a role in shaping physical reality.
It certainly raises that question. And there is research, like from Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, showing small but statistically real effects of human intention on physical systems in lab settings.
Wow. It's no wonder some top scientists started thinking differently.
Right, like Max Planck, Nobel Prize winner, father of quantum theory. Back in 1931, he said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness."
He flipped it completely. Matter comes from consciousness, not the other way around.
Exactly. Our usual thinking is upside down, as Gobert puts it. Planck was suggesting we need to look at the non-physical consciousness as the starting point.
So if consciousness is this fundamental stream, as you mentioned earlier, and we're just whirlpools in it, what does that mean for things usually called paranormal, psychic stuff?
That's where Dr. Bernardo Kastruck's other analogy, the whirlpool one, becomes really useful. Imagine reality as that stream of water that's fundamental consciousness. And each of us, our individual awareness, is like a localized whirlpool in that stream, still made of the same water, just temporarily patterned.
A whirlpool of consciousness. I like that.
Now think about it. If it's all one stream, is it really so strange to think that maybe some water from my whirlpool could slosh over into your whirlpool?
Ah, so information could potentially transfer directly.
Exactly. In this model, things like telepathy or knowing something at a distance wouldn't be paranormal or supernatural at all. They'd be expected consequences of the way consciousness itself is structured. The model predicts them.
That reframes it completely. So what about the evidence for these kinds of things? Like remote viewing?
Remote viewing is fascinating. It's basically describing a distant place without using your normal senses, often while in a sort of focused or trance-like state.
Sounds like sci-fi.
It does, but here's the kicker. The U.S. government, the CIA, and military ran a classified program for over 20 years using remote viewers. Psychic spies, essentially. Dead serious. And the declassified documents are pretty explicit. One CIA assessment concluded, quote, "Remote viewing is a real phenomenon." They said the evidence was too impressive to just dismiss as coincidence, and the implications were revolutionary.
Wow. Are there specific examples?
There are. One famous declassified case involved finding a downed Soviet bomber hidden in the jungle in Africa. Remote viewers described its location accurately when other intel methods had failed. Jimmy Carter himself later confirmed the accuracy of that specific instance.
That's pretty compelling. From the government itself?
And it wasn't just them. Princeton University ran rigorous lab studies for decades, over 600 trials, looking into it and related phenomena, finding statistically significant results suggesting something non-local was definitely going on.
Okay, so remote viewing has some surprisingly solid backing. What about knowing the future, precognition?
Precognition, yeah. Perceiving something before it happens.
Right.
This also came up in those government evaluations. Yes. Dr. Jessica Utz, a statistician who later became president of the American Statistical Association. So, someone who understands data. She reviewed the evidence for Congress and the CIA back in '95.
And what did she find?
Her report concluded that psychic functioning in general was, quote, well established, and that precognition specifically seems to work quite well. High praise from a top statistician.
That's significant. Okay, mind influencing matter, psychokinesis. Like bending spoons.
Well, maybe not bending spoons like in the movies. But the Princeton lab did a lot of work with random number generators, RNGs. These machines are built to be totally random, like an electronic coin flipper. They had people try to mentally influence the output. Try to get more ones than zeros, or vice versa. And consistently, over thousands of trials, they found a small but statistically undeniable effect. Human intention could slightly nudge the physical world.
Just slightly, but consistently.
Exactly. Not dramatic, but real. And then there's the Global Consciousness Project.
What's that?
It takes that RNG idea global. They have these generators running all over the world continuously. And they found that during moments of massive global attention and shared emotion, think 9/11 or Princess Diana's death, the output of these machines deviates significantly from randomness.
Whoa. Even though no one is trying to influence the machines directly.
Right. It's as if major events that rivet collective human consciousness create ripples that subtly affect the physical environment, or maybe the field these machines operate in. It raises huge questions about our interconnectedness.
It really does. And telepathy, mind-to-mind stuff. We've all had those weird moments thinking of someone and then they call.
Right. Those anecdotes are common. But again, there's lab work. The Ganzfeld experiment is probably the most famous rigorous design.
How does that work?
You have a receiver in a state of mild sensory deprivation, like ping pong balls over the eyes, white noise to reduce distractions. Meanwhile, a sender in another room focuses on a randomly chosen image or a video clip.
And the receiver tries to guess it.
They describe their impressions and then try to pick the correct target image from a set of 4 possibilities. Chance would be 25% accuracy.
And what do they find?
Consistently, across many studies, the hit rate is around 32%. That might not sound huge, but statistically, the odds of getting that result purely by chance are incredibly small, calculated as more than 1 billion to 1 against chance.
1 billion to 1. Okay, that's not chance.
It strongly suggests some kind of information transfer is happening. So putting it all together, remote viewing, precognition, psychokinesis, telepathy, the evidence points to these abilities being real, subtle effects. Not Hollywood magic, but statistically undeniable phenomena.
Which fits the receiver model, where the brain might be tuning into information that's not just inside the head.
It does. And it leads to some provocative thoughts. Like, could a condition like schizophrenia, where people hear voices uncontrollably, possibly be related? Maybe an analogy could be an uncontrolled or untuned version of this receiving capacity, where the filter isn't working right.
That's a very different way to think about it. Heavy stuff.
It definitely forces a rethink. And this whole whirlpool idea, this receiver model, it also has profound things to say about, well, what happens after death?
Right. If the whirlpool stops swirling.
The water doesn't disappear, does it? It just merges back into the mainstream. So if our consciousness is like that whirlpool when the body dies, the consciousness wouldn't necessarily end. It would just transition, change state, rejoin the broader flow.
So the model actually predicts survival of consciousness.
In a way, yes. It makes it the natural outcome, rather than something impossible.
And this seems to connect directly with near-death experiences, NDEs.
Absolutely. NDEs are powerful accounts from people who are clinically dead or close to it, cardiac arrest, brain flatlining, yet they report incredibly lucid, detailed, often life-changing experiences.
How does the filter model explain that? Usually you'd think a dying brain means less consciousness, not more.
Exactly. That's the paradox for the standard model. But if the brain is a filter, maybe during an NDE, the filter is shutting down or getting out of the way.
Ah, so less filtering means more access to that broader reality.
That's the idea. The constraints of the physical brain loosen, allowing for a wider, more intense experience of consciousness. And the most compelling NDE evidence comes from what are called veridical experiences.
Veridical meaning?
Meaning factually accurate aspects that the person couldn't possibly have known through normal means, like describing specific events happening elsewhere in the hospital, or details of their own surgery from a vantage point outside their body, which are later confirmed by doctors or witnesses.
So they see things they couldn't possibly see with their eyes, and it turns out to be true. That directly challenges the idea it's just a hallucination from a dying brain.
It very strongly challenges it.
Yeah.
And then there's the content of the NDEs themselves, particularly the life review.
The life review, where people see their whole life flash before them.
Yes, but it's often much more profound than that. The really striking part is that many report experiencing their actions from the perspective of the people they affected.
Wait, they feel what the other person felt.
Yes. They feel the joy they caused, but also the pain. They experience the consequences of their actions through the eyes and feelings of others. There's an account from Daniel Brinkley, a veteran.
I think I read about him.
He described reliving killing people in Vietnam, but experiencing their death, feeling their fear, and even feeling the grief of their families, their children losing a father.
Oh, wow. That would change you forever.
It completely changed him. He dedicated his life afterwards to hospice work, helping the dying. The implication is huge. If this is a potential reality for all of us, then empathy, compassion, altruism, they become incredibly rational ways to live.
Because you might literally experience the ripples of your own actions someday.
Exactly. And NDEs sometimes have physical after effects too, right? Anecdotes about electronics malfunctioning around NDE, watches stopping.
Yeah, I've heard those stories. And sometimes spontaneous healings.
That too. The case of Anita Moorjani is quite famous. She had end-stage cancer, organs shutting down, fell into a coma, had a profound NDE, and when she came back, the cancer rapidly disappeared. Doctors couldn't explain it.
These accounts are just incredible. So if consciousness survives, could we, communicate with those who've passed on?
Logically, if the stream model holds, it should be possible. And there's research into this, often called after-death communication or mediumship research.
Was that scientifically studied? It sounds very out there.
It does, but there's a history. Back in the late 1800s, prominent psychologists like William James studied mediums like Leonora Piper very carefully. And more recently, places like the Windbridge Research Center conduct rigorously controlled experiments.
How do they control for fraud or guessing?
They use methods like 5 levels of blinding, where neither the medium nor the experimenter interacting with them, nor the person evaluating the results knows which deceased person the reading is supposed to be about initially. The medium might just get a first name over the phone.
And they find.
They've published peer-reviewed studies showing that certified mediums can provide accurate information significantly above what you'd expect by chance, even under these highly blinded conditions.
Okay, that's unexpected. What about reincarnation? Children remembering past lives.
That's another really compelling line of research, mainly associated with the University of Virginia for over 50 years now. Dr. Ian Stevenson started it, and Dr. Jim Tucker continues it.
What do they study?
They investigate cases, usually young children, aged like 2 to 5, who spontaneously start talking about a previous life. They often give very specific details, names, places, how they died, details about the family they claim to have had.
And they check these details.
Meticulously. They have documented over 2,500 cases globally. In the strongest cases, they verify the specific, often obscure details the child provided. Sometimes the child recognizes people or places from the claimed past life.
Wow. Are there other kinds of evidence, like physical signs?
Sometimes, yes. There are cases where children have birthmarks or even physical deformities that uncannily match wounds or injuries described on the body of the deceased person they claim to have been, often matching autopsy reports or other records related to the death they described.
Okay, that's hard to explain away.
It really is. For many of these deeply investigated cases, reincarnation seems like the most straightforward, albeit startling, explanation. It suggests a cycle. Maybe that whirlpool forming again and again, accumulating experiences, the idea of old souls.
This brain as filter idea seems to pop up in other surprising areas too. You mentioned savants.
Right, savants. People often with significant brain damage or developmental disabilities, yet they possess these extraordinary, almost superhuman abilities. Incredible musical talent, lightning fast calculation, photographic memory. Think of the character in Rain Man, based on real individuals.
Yeah. How does conventional science explain that? Brain damage usually leads to loss of function.
Exactly. It's a huge puzzle for the standard brain produces consciousness model. How can less functional brain tissue lead to more ability? But for the filter model.
Less filtering could mean more access to information or ability.
Precisely. The damage might inadvertently reduce the filtering capacity, allowing this incredible information or talent, maybe from that broader consciousness field, to pour through.
And you said psychedelics show something similar?
Recent brain imaging studies, yeah. During intense psychedelic experiences, where people report profound insights and perceive reality as hyperreal or expanded, you actually see a reduction in activity in key brain networks, like the default mode network, which is linked to our sense of selves.
So less brain activity corresponds with more subjective experience, the opposite of what you'd expect if the brain was generating it.
Exactly the opposite. Again, it fits the filter model. Dampen the filter, and the experience becomes richer, broader.
Is there anything else that fits this pattern?
There's a phenomenon called terminal lucidity. It's incredibly poignant.
What happens?
You have patients, often with severe Alzheimer's or other dementia, who haven't recognized family, haven't spoken coherently for years. Their brains are physically ravaged by the disease.
Okay.
Then, maybe days, sometimes just hours before they die, they suddenly snap back. They become completely lucid, recognize loved ones, talk normally, recall memories. It's like they're fully themselves again.
For a short time before passing away.
Yes. Then they often relapse and die shortly after. It's inexplicable if the damaged brain is the consciousness. How could a brain that broken suddenly function perfectly again?
But if the brain is a filter, maybe near death, the filter somehow temporarily lifts.
That's the interpretation consistent with this model. Savants, psychedelics, terminal lucidity, they all show this inverse relationship. Sometimes reduced brain function correlates with an increase in conscious experience or ability, like clearing away clouds lets more sun through.
It's a consistent pattern across very different situations.
It is. There was even an old experiment, kind of gruesome maybe, the shuffle brain experiment.
What was that?
A scientist trying to prove materialism. Basically, yes, and that the brain isn't the producer, but maybe more like a receiver, a filter, a vehicle, allowing consciousness to experience this physical world.
Okay, so why does this matter? Why should you, listening now, really care about this potentially massive shift in understanding?
Because it fundamentally changes who we think we are.
Yeah.
If your identity isn't just your physical body and brain that happens to have consciousness.
But instead, you are the consciousness temporarily using a body and brain to experience this world.
Exactly. That reframes everything. Your purpose, your connection to others, your potential, what happens when the body dies. It all looks different.
It makes interconnectedness not just a nice idea, but maybe the literal structure of reality.
It could. And it leaves us with a really powerful thought to consider, drawing back to that life review from NDEs.
Go on.
If it's true, as so many NDE accounts suggest, that we might eventually experience our lives again, but feeling the impact of our actions on everyone we affected.
Feeling their joy, feeling their pain.
Yes. If that's a possibility, what does that compel you to reconsider about how you interact with the world, how you treat people, starting right now, today?